Hello and welcome back to another episode of The Pilot Principle, the podcast where we take a look at just the first episode of the series, the pilot, and then use it to decide if we should watch the entire series, or at least the second episode. On this episode of The Pilot Principle, we are doing something a little different. I like to shake it up every now and then. I'm spontaneous, I'm adventurous like that. So today we are rewinding the clock 20 years to take a look at the pilot episode of the cult classic series, Veronica Mars. I did hint in last week's episode that this episode would be an anniversary edition. So the question is, how many of you guessed it was going to be on Veronica Mars? Let me know if you guessed correctly, and if you guessed differently, what did you guess? Now, for those of you who have never had the honour, who have never had the privilege, Veronica Mars, which is also the name of the main character, is about a smart, witty and stubborn social outcast and teen detective who investigates various injustices on a daily basis, but also can solve those big murder cases. It is described as a mystery neo-noir teen drama, and tick, 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 to be perfectly honest with you. Now, honestly, I have been gagging to talk about the pilot for one of my favourite shows for so long here on the podcast. So there was absolutely no way on God's green earth that I was about to pass up the opportunity when I realised that it was the 20th anniversary for the pilot for Veronica Mars. We're not even going to go into that too deeply, the fact that it's been 20 years since this show began, because yeah, I mean, hey, I don't mind growing up and getting older, but 20 years? Am I the only person who still is confused that 20 years is not 1994? That 1994 was, in fact, 30 years ago. Before I spiraled too far down the rabbit hole, let us talk credits. So, the Veronica Mars pilot episode aired on September the 22nd, 2004, and it sadly has no name. Well, the name is technically Pilot. And if you've been listening for a while, you know how I feel about an unnamed pilot episode and the whole general no naming of episodes thing. However, I will allow the pilot episode of Veronica Mars to be called Pilot because it is a product of its time and subsequent episodes do have titles, so that's okay with me. The synopsis for the pilot tells us that during the day, Veronica negotiates high school like any average teenage girl. At night, she helps her father's struggling new private investigator business. Not gonna lie to you, it's a bit dry, doesn't really hold the gravitas and the nuance of the pilot episode, in my opinion, but that's okay because I'm here to convince you to watch the pilot episode of Veronica Mars. So let's move swiftly on. We have an episode length of 40 minutes and a series length of 22 episodes. And here in the UK, I watched the Veronica Mars pilot on Prime Video, where you can also get the entirety of Series 1, Series 2 and Series 3 if you are a Prime member subscription person. Unfortunately, in the pilot episode, we miss out on the iconic series theme song, We Used to Be Friends by the Danny Warhols. However, don't say I never do anything for you, because here is a little snippet of We Used to Be Friends. This either really takes you back or has left you utterly confused or has given you a new song to add to your playlist. So either way, you're welcome. So the pilot episode of Veronica Mars was written by Rob Thomas, who is also the series creator. Thomas also created the 1998 series Cupid and the 2009 remake of the same name, Cupid. He developed and wrote episodes of 90210, the 2008 reboot, revival? Yeah, revival. He also wrote and created the series Party Down, which I still haven't watched, and iZombie, which I didn't know and will be adding to the never-ending watch list. For any Creek fans out there, Thomas also wrote a few episodes of Dawson's Creek. The pilot episode of Veronica Mars was directed by Mark Pizinarski, and Pizinarski has directed episodes from a number of popular television series, including iZombie, Gossip Girl, 90210, Friday Night Lights, love Friday Night Lights, Everwood, Riverdale, and My So-Called Life. And My So-Called Life is where he got his first director's credit. Does anybody know My So-Called Life? It stars a very young Claire Danes and Gerard Leto. Now, I did wonder when I read the name Mark Pisanarski, and the internet doth verify that the Series 3 character of Piz is in fact named after Pisanarski, which is cute. Speaking of Piz, who actually has nothing to do with this pilot episode whatsoever, but is a good segue into characters and cast. Let's talk cast. So the principal cast member for Veronica Mars is, of course, Kristen Bell, who plays Veronica Mars herself. Somebody will have to keep count for how many times I say Veronica Mars in this episode. Okay, so Belle has been in loads of stuff, so I'm just choosing some of her well-known roles and some of my faves. So she has been in the movies Burlesque and Bad Mums. She has also starred in Heroes, House of Lies, The Good Place, and she will be starring in the upcoming Netflix series Nobody Wants This. Pilot review TBC. Belle has also starred in episodes of Party Down and iZombie, and you will in fact get sick of me mentioning these two shows over the next few minutes. As a voice actress, you might recognise Belle as the voice of Gossip Girl and Anna in the Disney movie Frozen. And next on the selected cast list, we have Enrico Colantoni, who plays Keith Mars. Now, Colantoni has a bunch of random one-episode features in his filmography, which does include iZombie, which he directed 2 episodes of. But he has had a number of lead roles, including in the series Hope and Glory, Just Shoot Me, Flashpoint, Person of Interest, Station 11, which I never ended up watching, but I think I wasn't a fan of the book, so I was never compelled to press play on the series. And of late, going back to Colantoni and no longer talking about myself, he is also starring in the new series The English Teacher. Next we have Jason Dohring. I'm going to go with Dohring. So Jason Dohring plays Logan Eccles, and Dohring has starred in 100 Deeds for Eddie McDowd, Roswell, Boston Public, Moonlight, which is this brilliant, terrible vampire series. He has also starred in Supernatural, The Originals, which I didn't know about, which makes sense. I only watched the first 2 series of The Originals. And he's had a long-running role in the series SEAL Team. And you guessed it, he's also starred in Party Down and iZombie. Thomas really likes to keep the family together. Now, the pilot also stars Percy Daggs III as Wallace, Francis Capra as Weevil, Teddy Dunn as Duncan Kane, and has a guest appearance from Amanda Seyfried as Lily Kane. Okay, that was pretty fun seeing what all the actors and things have been up to since the show ended. So Veronica Mars had an original run of 64 episodes between 2004 and 2007. Now, when the show was cancelled, fans sent Mars bars to the network to convince them to, get it back on air. This was before the days of social media, where it wasn't as easy for fans to bully networks into getting their way. Sadly, the Mars bars didn't work. But Thomas did not lose hope. In 2013, with the aid of Belle, he set up a Kickstarter to crowdfund a Veronica Mars movie, which made its $2 million goal in under 12 hours, and in total it made almost $6 million. For anybody who has watched the Veronica Mars movie, you're welcome, because I'm pretty sure I donated to the cause back in the day. So the Veronica Mars movie was released in 2014. There was a 4th series, which I completely forgot about because I haven't watched yet. And that lasted for 8 episodes in 2019 over on Hulu before it was cancelled. There are also 2 Veronica Mars books. So Veronica Mars and the $1,000 Tan Line, which I bought a copy of in the Strand in New York City in 2015. And Mr. Kiss and Tell, which I think I just read on Kindle. And I mention both of these books not just because I like to talk about the fact that I'm a reader, which, yeah, I actually kind of do, but also because Rob Thomas originally wrote Veronica Mars, or should I say a variation of it, as a young adult novel for publishing company Simon & Schuster. So instead of Veronica Mars, we could have had Vinnie Pluto. My point is that this young adult novel would have had a male lead instead of the brilliance that we get in Kristen Bell's Veronica Mars. Blimey, that was a lot of information, so let us take a quick beat. And while we do, I will use the opportunity to say hello to the handful of new subscribers that I've had recently, which is lovely, isn't it? Thanks for joining us here over on the Pilot Principle. Welcome to the crew. I've just decided that we're a crew. Pilot, crew, plain humor. Why not? Let's just immerse ourselves in it. So if you are listening and have not yet joined the crew, what on earth are you waiting for? Hit follow. I'll give you a second. Much appreciated. Okay, strap in, crew. Let's talk about the first 10 minutes. I'll get used to it. Let's talk about the first 10 minutes of Veronica Mars. So, why the first 10 minutes, you wonder with bated breath? Because the first 10 minutes, she sets the stage, darling. She lets us know about the characters, the tone, the current state of the world, and what is about to tip it on its axis. What we want from those first 10 minutes is a little bit of drama. And this is what the first 10 minutes of the pilot episode of Veronica Mars gives us. We have a narrator. Our narrator is Veronica Mars, and she describes the town where she lives, Neptune in California, a place without a middle class. She tells us that if you go to Neptune High, your parents are either millionaires or your parents work for millionaires. Her job is tailing philandering spouses and investigating false injury claims, so not a millionaire. At school, there is a crowd gathered around a guy who has been taped naked to a flagpole with the word snitch written on his chest. Not grammatically correctly, but phonetically correctly, so that's something. Kids are taking selfies and nobody wants to help this poor fellow down because the bikers put him up there and they don't want to be next. Veronica wastes no time in giving two shits about any school politics by cutting the guy, Wallace, down. And for that, she's called a freak. Don't you just love teenagers? We next see Veronica in class and she is taking a little nap, but proves that she still has her wits about her by answering the teacher's question in a way that is smart, nuanced, and sassy. Veronica is a bit of a pariah, but we learn that she wasn't always this way. And by this way, I mean sitting alone at lunch and being called a freak on the regular. She used to date the richest guy in school and sit with the popular kids until her boyfriend, Duncan Kane, ghosted her one day. After school, Veronica goes to work as a receptionist for her dad's private detective agency, Mars Investigations, hence the napping during lessons. When she arrives, her dad is finishing up a meeting with Celeste Kane, who hates Veronica as much as she adores her son, Duncan. In Veronica's words, Celeste Kane, yes, she's a bitch, but my dad did try to send her husband to jail for life. And that, crew, is the 10-minute mark. How good was that first 10 minutes? You're engaged. You're fired up. You want to stop listening to this podcast right now and just go and press play on Veronica Mars' pilot episode, don't you? Yes, this podcast is basically me just convincing you to watch or rewatch Veronica Mars. Right, let's just get into those first 10 minutes. And I completely forgot about the whole voiceover, well, less of a voiceover and more of an internal monologue element to the series. And I'm not mad at it. Sometimes I am, because it can be used as a sort of cheat code in terms of narrative device. But it's okay here on Veronica Mars because Veronica is a loner and she's also witty, and we need to see those aspects of her personality come through. And from what I recall, the narration element is something that occurs throughout the entirety of the show, which again is a good thing because it shows that some thought has been put into the narration and it's not just used as a band-aid to help glaze over plot holes, etc. What I found quite interesting is that it's not the most gripping introduction in terms of action. However, we do learn a lot about the main character, Veronica Mars, the town she lives in, Neptune, a place without a middle class, and the world, which gives us this sort of sepia, gritty, almost law upon itself vibe. I tried not to use the word vibe, but I genuinely could not think of another word. Now, at the end of the first 10 minutes, we are given a little bait to keep us hooked and keep watching. But at this point, we are already pretty invested in our main character, Veronica. Speaking of Veronica, it's time to talk main characters. So, Veronica Mars, what to say about Veronica Mars? Well, let's just start by addressing the elephant in the room. She's a bad bitch. She's that girl. She is confident, independent, smart, sassy, witty, knows how to navigate the system to work for her. She's aspirations, she's goals. She's great. I used to want to be Veronica Mars. I used to want to wear her personality like a skin on top of my own. The highest compliment you can give me is to say that I remind you of Veronica Mars. Okay, one of the highest compliments. Somebody once said that I reminded them of Christina Yang on Grey's Anatomy. This was before I had watched Grey's Anatomy, so I had no idea how to take that. Once I did watch Grey's Anatomy, I realised it was a compliment of the highest order. Right, back to Veronica Mars. As I said, she gives the ultimate main character energy. However, she didn't always used to be this way. The pilot does include elements of flashback, and during these flashback scenes, we see the kind of person that Veronica used to be. Firstly, she had long hair, so that's a good way for us to distinguish the past from the present. Long-haired Veronica used to hang out with the cool kids. She had a rich boyfriend, and her life was just a little bit more vanilla than it is now. And in the pilot episode, we understand where that change came from. We'll get to those reasons very soon, but what I find quite interesting about Veronica Mars is that, well, I don't get the sense that she misses who she was, despite all the things that she's been through to get her from that person to the person that she is now. We learn about Veronica Mars in the pilot episode that she was unceremoniously dumped by her boyfriend, Duncan Kane. Her best friend, Lily Kane, was murdered. Her dad, Keith, was ridiculed. Her mother couldn't take their family's fall from grace and left town. She's basically treated like Hester Prynne at school. And we learn in the pilot episode as well that she was sexually assaulted. And then when she went to report the crime, she wasn't taken seriously by the police. Veronica has been through it over the past year, so we really get the sense that she has earned that tough exterior shell. And this is all in the pilot episode, but it's not all gloom and doom, because Veronica Mars is loved by her dad, Keith. Speaking of Keith Mars, it is clear that he is where Veronica gets most of her personality from, and that's that goofy, inquisitive, morally guided pursuit for the truth above all else type traits. Now, Keith Mars was the former sheriff for Neptune. Former because after Veronica's best friend, Lily Kane, got murdered, Keith went after Jake Kane, Lily and Duncan's dad, for the murder. Jake is a beloved member of the community, and so when Keith went after him, a lot of people stood against him. It divided the town in two, and it made him and his entire family hated. However, Keith, who, as I said, like Veronica, is stubborn and morally guided, refused to be run out of town. A key aspect of Keith's personality is that he loves, trusts, and knows his daughter, Veronica, and he's also deeply protective of her. Now, you might not think so because of how he often leaves town and leaves her to her own devices and allows her to go on stakeouts and, take photos of people doing creepy shit. But he does. He loves her. He adores her. In fact, Keith Mars is one of my favourite TV dads. He's up there with Paul Hennessy from Eight Simple Rules and Tim Allen's character from Last Man Standing. Okie dokie, let us whiz through some other standout characters from the pilot. We have Wallace, who is the new kid on the block, who Veronica cut down from the flagpole. Now, Wallace is a good kid. He sees through Veronica's tough exterior to her marshmallow inside. However, he is a little naive as he does get on the wrong side of the local motorcycle gang, which wasn't exactly his fault, but it was a necessary sacrifice for us, as Wallace is what I would like to call the Gus character. So if you've never heard me mention the Gus character before, it's a term I made up, which comes from the show Recess. So in the Disney cartoon Recess, there was a character called Gus Griswold, who was new to 3rd Street School and eventually started hanging out with TJ Detweiler and the gang. Now, because Gus was new to the school, he didn't know anything. He was always like, why is this swinging kid doing this? Why is King Bob doing that? What do you mean I can't talk to the Ashleys? What do you mean I have to do this? Why? Just always why in that boy. Just constant with the questions. However, him being annoying was the necessary sacrifice because Gus is us. Gus is the audience. And having a character like Gus is an organic way for questions about the world to be asked and answered. So Wallace is our Gus. Wallace is cool though. He clearly respects and is in awe of Veronica and will make a great friend to her after her year of loneliness. Next, we have Weevil, who runs the teen chapter of the biker gang. Now, we can't tell if he's harmless, but we are on edge about him. We do see him form an alliance with Veronica and wonder if this is something that will continue going forward. And it's interesting because he might come across as a baddie, but he makes a great juxtaposition with the guy who actually gives antagonistic energy, and that is rich kid Logan Eccles. Now, one thing to say about Logan Eccles, he hates Veronica Mars, and it's hard to see why, but at the same time, we kind of get it. It's obviously got something to do with a relative loyalty to his best friend Duncan, who is Veronica's ex, as well as the fact that Logan used to date Veronica's best friend Lily, who was murdered. And then, of course, there is that whole Keith going after Duncan's dad for his girlfriend's murder situation that, he can't help but to project on poor innocent Veronica. Finally, as we've mentioned him by name a few times, although he doesn't really say much in the pilot episode, is Duncan Kane. And one thing to say about Duncan Kane is that he is a ticking clock. We are wondering why he broke up with Veronica and why he is still acting so salty. He broke up with her, but he is acting like she doesn't even exist. Like it's so confusing. And, it's just sad to see that boys never change. And now it is time for a quick interlude to see what my media consumption is looking like beyond the pilot principle. And as per usual, we start with books. And so I have finished reading My Name is Mame by Jessica George, which was a contemporary coming-of-age new adult book. And I rated this book 4 out of 5 stars. But my question is, who asked it to go so hard? Who asked it to be so relatable? I struggled to read the first 50 to 100 pages of this book because I had to keep checking if I was reading non-fiction or fiction. Seriously, it was uncanny how many similar aspects this character had to myself. And I think even though you might not have the same sense of deja vu I had while reading My Name is Mame, the main character, Mame/Maddie, is instantly likable and you will fly through this book. After I finished My Name is Mame, I picked up Piranesi by Susanna Clarke. I am only 1 chapter into this book, a little bit confused, but that's fine. We're on a journey. Friends have said really good things about it, so we shall see. Next, moving on to film, I haven't actually been to the cinema since the last time I checked in. However, I have watched many a film, so I was on the plane to New York, and while I was on the plane, I managed to watch 3 films. I watched Mrs. Harris Goes to Paris, fantastic, The Beekeeper, disappointing, and Aquaman 2, why did I bother? And then while I was in the hotel, I started playing a game called What the Fudge Cake Am I Watching? Which is where you basically flip through the TV, pause it when you think you've got to a movie, and guess what the fudge cake you're watching. So here are a few movies that I came across while I was playing said game. Oh, crap. Oh, Agent Cody Banks. That's the name. I couldn't remember it for a second. So that's the Frankie Muniz spy film, Agent Cody Banks. Next, I watched Gods and Kings, which, was it good? No. But it's that perfect kind of movie for you just to be lying there and just cussing it out. And it did remind me of how Hollywood went through that fever dream of creating a bunch of movies set around the whole Egyptian gods era. So there was Exodus, Gods and something. There was Immortals, and there was another one. Oh, I can't remember. Immortals is the one with Henry Cavill, isn't it? Well, there's another one with Sam Worthington. Can't remember, but what a time to be alive. What else did I watch? I sadly just missed watching Taken, and I have been dying to rewatch Taken for ages, so I'm just gonna have to find it in my own time. I watched this really random movie with Jeff Daniels and Anna Sophia Robb because of Winn-Dixie, which I had never heard of before. I caught clips of Cabaret, specifically during that really popular song that I can't remember the name of right now. And then finally, I saw half of Black Christmas, which is not typically my genre. It's a horror slasher film, but guys, I was kind of drawn in, so I need to go and find the rest of that film and finish it up. Hopefully it will just appear in the next 2 months as we get towards spooky season. Here are a few movies that I need to play catch up on. Firstly, Rebel Ridge, which is out on Netflix, and I need to desperately watch that one for the plot. Lee has recently been released, and that is starring Kate Winslet. We have Sing Sing, which I have not been able to find anywhere. So I'm going to have to go out of my way to watch this movie, but I will do it. I will do it because I've heard really good things about it. Now, the London Film Festival is in fact coming up, and I do intend to make it my entire personality. So I might be dedicating one of these behind the pods to the movies that I get to see at the London Film Festival. So stay tuned to that in a future pod. Okay, finally in TV land, I did finish watching the Netflix series Chaos, and I enjoyed, I want to say 80% of it. The last 20% was a bit underwhelming for all the build up, but ultimately it was a decent watch. I watched the pilot episode of The Perfect Couple, which actually was probably going to be my first pilot of series 2. But I was away, so I couldn't watch it for the pod. So I'm watching it for pleasure instead. And I have to say, after the first episode, I am intrigued. I do intend to watch more. I freaking love a murder mystery, don't I, guys? Gosh, what else is on the list? I am thinking of watching series 2 of Sherwood. I was always thinking about watching it, but you know what? Series 1, it fell a bit flat, basically, with the guy who was going around doing the killing, because his reasoning was just... It's like they try to be better than themselves, in a sense. If you've seen Sherwood, do you agree with me on how series 1 ended? I don't want to spoil it for anybody who hasn't seen it, but I was disgruntled with how season 1 ended. But I did want to watch series 2, so I'm just waiting for all the episodes to come out, and then I will do a cheeky binge. I always call it a binge. It will take me 2 weeks. I don't have the time to just sit and watch 6 episodes at once. I wish I did, but I don't. Now, speaking of BBC, there is a new BBC series that actually looks quite good, guys, and I'm tempted to slot it into the schedule. It's called Night Sleeper, and apparently it is filmed in real time. That's intriguing. Let me know if you want a pilot review of that over on the socials. Just search at Pilot Principle and drop a comment wherever. That's it from me behind the pod. Let us get back to talking about the pilot episode for one of the best shows ever. There are a litany of reasons why the Veronica Mars pilot works so effectively. The first thing for me is the fact that we, the audience, are made to feel like we are in this world. I feel like I am a resident of Neptune, California, and Veronica does this really organically by basically including us in the conversation. So here's an example. In the pilot episode, she says, "Everyone remembers the bumbling sheriff. That sheriff was my dad." The way she says everybody remembers as if we are part of the everybody, and it really just helps quickly drawing you into this world that Rob Thomas has created. Also, a fantastic thing about the Veronica Mars pilot and Veronica Mars the series in general is that there are some great one-liners. Here is a cheeky example. So, Veronica says, "Logan Eccles, every school has an obligatory psychotic jackass. He's ours." Sorry? What? In one sentence, you were able to completely reduce an entire human being in a palatable morsel. What? Stop it. The show is so clever with its words. It's a little bit tongue-in-cheek. The pilot just does such a good job of painting very quick pictures of this whole cast of characters really, really effectively. What I also really like about the pilot episode is that we only meet and learn about Lily Kane 12 minutes into the pilot. So Lily Kane has been murdered about a year ago, possibly less. However, this storyline doesn't come up, like I say, until about 12 minutes in. So those first 10 minutes are really about us getting to know Veronica, the world she's in, the setup for what's to come. And we are teased this knowledge about Lily because when Celeste Kane, who is Lily's mum, comes to see Keith at the beginning of the episode, Veronica does say, "Celeste Kane, yes, she's a bitch, but my dad did try to send her husband to jail for life." Specifically for murdering their daughter. So, eesh. So we are teased Lily Kane, but we are not introduced to Lily Kane. And when we are introduced to Lily Kane, boy, oh boy, is it a doozy. In a flashback, Lily says to Veronica, "I've got a secret, a good one." And then Veronica tells us, "Those were the last words she ever said to me. What? Sorry? If your jaw doesn't hit the floor, do you even have a jaw? It's so mysterious. It's so intriguing. It just subtly drops breadcrumbs that you are just compelled to follow. Yes, in the pilot episode, there is a lot to take in, but I think it's really well layered. We meet the characters, we get to understand the world, we see that we'll be jumping back and forth between the past and the present, and we are given 3 or 4 investigations that sort of knock into one another. For me, one of the greatest selling points about the pilot episode of Veronica Mars is that it is smart. It makes you think, and that is what keeps you engaged. Now, a couple of quick notes on the pilot episode itself. So, the original pilot script was apparently a lot darker in tone than the one that then got filmed. So, Lily Kane, in the pilot that we watch, she is found by her pool, whereas in an original draft of the script, she was washed up on the beach. However, this was deemed a little too dark. There was also a lengthy debate as to whether Veronica should be a rape victim. They did eventually include this in the pilot. And personally, I don't know if it was needed in episode 1. In terms of numbers, the pilot was viewed by an average of 2.49 million American viewers on its original broadcast date, which ranked at 108 out of 112 in the weekly charts. In terms of its reception, the Washington Post praised the pilot episode for relying on strong storytelling and casting. The Hollywood Reporter said that the pilot was so cleverly constructed, the hero so engaging and complicated, and the story so filled with great dialogue that I wonder how anyone could sustain this level of accomplishment. Kristen Bell herself was praised by critics across the board for her performance as Veronica Mars, as was the creator Rob Thomas for his writing. You know, just in case you didn't believe me when I told you that this is one of the greatest shows of all time. Now, in terms of an end of episode hook, Veronica discovers that her father still has the Lily Kane murder file and that he has been working on it over the last few months, which doesn't make sense to Veronica because a killer has already confessed and is on death row. The question is, of course, why is Keith still looking into Lily Kane's murder? Also in the pilot episode, Celeste Kane, of course, came to Mars Investigations because she needed a private investigator. And she specifically wanted to check up on her husband, Jake, because she felt that he was cheating on her. At the end of the episode, Veronica discovers that the woman that Jake Kane goes to meet is in fact her mother, who left her and town months prior. Now, Veronica's father clued on to the fact that Jake was meeting with Veronica's mother, but said nothing to Veronica. So Veronica is wondering why her dad lied to her. Why on earth would Veronica's mother be meeting with her ex-boyfriend's father? And those are the 2 main end of episode hooks. Now, in terms of the serial arc, we're wondering, will Veronica and Keith, I suppose, regain their status in town? We get the sense that there will be episodic mysteries to solve, but there will also be that big question to answer. And in the case of series 1 of Veronica Mars, it's who killed Lily Kane. I'm so excited. Does anybody else just really miss 22 episode series where each episode has its own individual arc but still feeds into the wider serial arc? Ah, what a time to be alive. Now, if you aren't already a massive Veronica Mars nerd who listened to this episode for the nostalgia, are you tempted to give it a watch? From what I know of series 1, I can tell you a few reasons why it might be for you. So if you like a layered female protagonist, then I'm surprised that you haven't already taken the plunge to watch Veronica Mars. If you like the old formula of episodic stories and a serial mystery to solve, rewind the clock to 2004 and just take a trip down memory lane. I can also tell you that the series is incredibly well paced and padded because there is a lot to explore over 22 episodes across themes such as friendship, family, small town dangers, general teen angst, re-exploration of the past, and general Scooby-Doo, Nancy Drew malarkey. Now, I personally cannot fathom why you wouldn't want to watch Veronica Mars, but let's see if I can muster up one or two reasons. So, Veronica Mars may not be for you if you do not like an over reliance on flashbacks and narration. If you find multiple storylines hard to follow, again, Veronica Mars might not be for you. And finally, Veronica Mars is a dark teen drama. So if you like teen dramas, Veronica Mars is possibly too dark. And if you like a dark drama, then Veronica Mars is too teenage. And the last thing for me to do is to give the pilot episode of Veronica Mars, a pilot score. And I will be giving it a bias 5 out of 5. Now, when you go and watch it, based on my stellar recommendation, come and tell me how much you loved it over on Instagram and Twitter at Pilot Principle, because I really, really miss having the time to rewatch those old favourite comfort shows that are just pure gems. And Veronica Mars has a fantastic first series with gut-punching twists and revelations, and the pilot really just sets the stage for characters that you will remember for a lifetime. I'm sorry, is that too mushy? Well, you know what they say. The pilot principal's Jen. She's a marshmallow.